Hello, I'm Sue Bauer, and this is the fifth and final session in our series of weekly webinars for BlendKit 2015 as we wrap up both Week 05, Quality Assurance in Blended Learning, and, believe it or not, the BlendKit 2015 course as a whole. Please note that you do still have until April 6th to complete any assignments that you wish. With us today, as previously, making sure everything is running great, is our colleague John Pizzo, and of course my great co-facilitator Rohan Jawala. Also joining us are our guest panelists, Dr. Dylan Barth and Dr. Jessica Knott, whom I'm going to introduce more formally in just a moment. All right. At the end of today's session, we're going to be sharing a number of important course wrap-up details, so please stick around for that. But for now, we're going to go on to one of my favorite segments of our weekly webinar, and that is our featured images of the week. So first, you can see we have Ed and Ed and Mark, and they are showing off their artistic skills and also their abilities as online course blenders. So thank you very much. In our next featured images of the week, we have Elizabeth and Allison. They also are showing off their amazing, talented artistry and a little bit of their comedian side. Great, great images for us to share this week. And lastly, we have Callie Ann and Ed. Callie Ann is an artist, and she's displaying some information about the online persona. Who are you going to be online? And that's very important. I'm glad she touched on that with us. And then we also have Ed sharing some blended resources with us. So thanks as always for those contributions and for helping us to build our community here online. Our next slide is going to take us into today's topic with a few short polls on the logistics of assuring quality in the development of your blended course. So let us take a minute to see what you're thinking about this week in the topic of designing. For this week's topic. All right, so we have polls 1 and 2. Displaying first. Poll 1, what are the biggest potential obstacles to completing your blended learning course? And without a doubt, you said 100% is development, and it is. It's huge, that whole design and development part of creating your course. But don't worry, because a well-designed course is an easily sustainable course, so keep that in mind. All right, poll 2, as we contemplate the idea of peer review of your blended course, let's give attention to a couple specific issues. For instance, does your institution, college, or department, has it adopted standards to guide blended course evaluations? About 40%, about 40% of you say yes. Some of you say you're not really sure. All right, let's go on to polls 3 and 4. All right, poll 3, do you have colleagues whom you would be comfortable in inviting to review your blended course? I'm happy to see that 100% of you said yes, you have people to collaborate with. And that is great, but I'm going to ask you to stretch a little bit out of your comfort zone, or maybe you're a late submission to the polls and your answer was no. And if that's the case, I would suggest you try to get inside the BlendKit 2015 and maybe ask another participant in BlendKit 2015 to maybe look with you or give you some feedback on your course. We also have poll 4, which have you found written criteria for blended course quality that you could adapt for sharing with colleagues? 40% of you said yes, and the rest of you said you don't know. Well, I'm going to promote that if you answered yes, please go ahead and share that in the discussion area, and that way we can give some resources to those out there who answered that they do not. I also want to promote a little bit of our learning community even more. Throughout the weeks, Rohan and I have been privy to some of the blogs that you've been creating and posting, and some of you even starting your portfolios in. So here you can see I just did a few snapshots of some of the blogs that we've been able to get into and see grow throughout BlendKit. There's also a bit.ly URL on the bottom, and I would promote that all of you take a few minutes to maybe go look at a few of those, and like I said, try to see if you can build some community with some others that are out there developing their blended courses as well. And as always, don't forget we have the Twitter stream, and we'll be hoping to continue to contribute to that. All right, so like I said, just make sure that we try to stay in touch. Okay, our Q&A. As we hear from our guest panelists today, please listen for their approaches to presenting content and assignments in their blended courses. During the presentation, please use the Q&A panel to post any comments or questions which you would like to ask our panelists. And if we have time during the session, we will get to them. Otherwise, as in previous weeks, we will make sure to follow up in the discussion area. Again, up on the top right-hand window, you can go ahead and select the Q&A. Or actually, you start with the little tic-tac-toe board and then you select Q&A from there. Okay, let's get on to the glorious part of our webinar. Please allow me to introduce to you Dr. Dylan Barth from the University of Wisconsin and Dr. Jessica Knott from Michigan State University. Dr. Dylan Barth was kind enough to attend a second webinar with us today this spring. Dylan is the Interim Associate Director at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee Learning Technology Center, where he coordinates the Faculty Development Program for online and blended teaching. We also have Dr. Jessica Knott, and she is an instructional designer assisting faculty and staff at Michigan State University to develop learning-rich, fully online, and flipped and/or blended courses. She is also involved in research initiatives, faculty development training, and outreach and collaboration with varied educational organizations. We're going to have a little bit of a different setup than we've had in previous webinars. Usually I will start the question with one of our guests and then flip it to the other. However, we've got some lengthy questions today, so I'm going to go ahead and at some of the slides ask just one of them to contribute to the first part and another to contribute to the second. And I'll go ahead and set that up before we get started. However, with the first question we've got for today, we are going to go ahead and we're going to open it up to both, and we're going to start with Dylan and then we will have Jessica. So what are some of the best ways and or best practices to get students to evaluate other students' work with some quality feedback? Dylan?
Yeah, so I just want to say real quick, thank you to Sue and Rohan for inviting me to be here again. And to sort of answer this question about getting students to give feedback to other students, I think that this is something that I incorporate quite a bit in my courses. I teach a blended business writing class, and so this is really getting feedback on writing is really important. I think that one of the strategies I use is to provide some sort of value proposition to students so that they can see the benefit to them, not only in getting feedback, but also in seeing what others are doing and what kinds of strategies or moves that they can kind of get from other students. I think that making students accountable is very important, so having some sort of mechanism by which evaluations or peer feedback is itself evaluated, either by you or by the student who receives the feedback. I think that providing some samples, some examples, either in class or in the online environment, can help make that a little bit more effective. And something that I do quite a bit is to use the same rubric that I evaluate student work. I ask students to use those rubrics then to evaluate their peers. And what I like about that is it allows students not only a mechanism by which to help other students with their work, but also it can provide a good discussion about what it is that I'm expecting as the instructor from students in their own work. So they sort of get a double duty there.
Great, thanks Dylan. And to you, Jessica?
You know, Dylan really hit it kind of on the head when he talked about transparency and consistency with your students. I've done research in the peer review kind of area, evaluating a system where we ask students to peer review each other's work. And what came out overwhelmingly was in the classes where they didn't know why they were doing it, they just didn't find it very useful and they were less likely to engage in the assignment. So when I do these kind of things, I try to be almost over informative. This is what you're doing, this is why you're doing it, this is why you should have ownership. Keep groups small whenever possible so that, you know, they're not accountable to 5 people. That can feel kind of like, I'll get lost in there. But if they're only accountable to 1 or 2 others, then it feels more like they need to be present. I'm a big fan of the Eli review system. It's a peer review system where you can basically put students in groups and then you have a dashboard of how much they've completed and how far along in the assignment they are, and that's really useful to find those students who are struggling or those who might need more help. And finally, I really like to have students do Jing videos, that kind of going through and having them evaluate each other in a video, audio format. You know, it's kind of like when we, as instructors, grade a paper. How many of you have had a student come back and say, oh wow, that was really harsh, when really you just were, you know, asking them to make a change. And the video and audio really can take that away and make that feedback for your students a little richer. Yeah, so those are just some of the things I do.
Great, thank you. Wonderful answers and resources. And also, I've found it too with some of my younger students that I have to remind them that this is feedback for improvement. This isn't judgment. And sometimes I think they take it personally. And again, I just need to remind them, like you said, that it's for improvement. It's just a comment type thing. All right, great. So let's move on to question number 2. And this question is in relationship to course development. And this is one of our longer questions. So I'm going to start it off with Jessica and then give it over to Dylan, and then I'll come back for any other questions or answers that they have for us. So starting with Jessica, course evaluations can be tricky with instructors who are deeply invested in the development in terms of not offending them. How do you address this generally with teachers in a way that is perceived as constructive criticism meant to be helpful rather than a judgment statement? And I'll stop there and hand that over to you, Jessica.
This is a really great question. I got excited when I saw this on the list. In some ways, I've learned the hard way. I work at a research institution. I work with faculty from all disciplines, all technology abilities, different teaching philosophies. The first thing I always have them do is write down what their teaching philosophy is so that I can ground what I'm telling them in that philosophy. Try to avoid using words like standardization and use words like consistency. And then, if you can provide a rubric like Quality Matters or the checklist that you guys posted in the readings, that can really help too, because what you can say is, look, this is what's being evaluated. We're looking at course design. We're not necessarily looking at your teaching. Kind of ground all of your feedback in these standards, tools that are used nationwide, and the literature that goes with them. It's much easier for a faculty member to swallow, like, wow, there's research that shows that maybe I should change what I'm doing, than it is for me to just say, oh, I think you should do this. So just like your students, give them a reason and give them some of that documentation. I found that's really helpful.
Great, thank you. And again, to Dylan, in relationship to the course development, do review guides help in these regards, and how so? And what role does the student evaluation play in the evaluation of teaching effectiveness and course quality?
So could you explain a little bit more about what this person was asking in terms of review guides?
Let's see. Do review guides help in these regards, and if how so? That is a good question. I may need to ask them to follow up with us in the discussion area.
Okay.
I actually believe it may have been related to the question above that got pulled out as maybe a second bullet.
Okay.
But I will follow up with that. So let's go ahead to the last bullet then.
Okay. Well, I think that student evaluations, they play an important role, at least definitely at UW-Milwaukee, in terms of promotion and tenure packets. Sometimes they're a little bit contextless. It might be just the numbers for quantitative information about student satisfaction. So I know on that level it does. But in terms of course quality, I think that it's a major component, at least to find out, for me, one, where there may be some particular problems with the workload issue, where students are really getting overwhelmed with what you're asking them to do, what they may be having trouble with. I use quite a bit of feedback within the course to get this kind of information, and that is well before the kind of more summative feedback at the end. So for example, on Wednesday, I think I have a third survey for with my students, and what I like to do is bring that into the face-to-face environment and have a little bit more of a deeper conversation about those questions. It's one piece. Having even your own experience as an instructor, I think, is obviously very important. Students don't always know what's good for them, and having some experience, your own experience as an instructor, and then peer instructors as well, giving some feedback to you, I think are equally important. So it's one piece of the puzzle there, but I think the earlier you can get that, the more helpful it is for you to kind of make changes throughout the semester, and even to help in future semesters.
Yeah, I think soliciting that feedback from your students along the way is definitely a great strategy. And I've even had some faculty who have set it up to be anonymous, which kind of helps with the contributions that they get. Also, at the University of Central Florida, for years we kind of just had a general student evaluation, and it's just been in the past few years that we've really been able to implement and ask questions about online learning specifically. So that's been nice. Okay, let's move on to question 3. I'm going to start this. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me give Jessica. Jessica, Dylan, do either of you have anything else for question 2? Okay,
Nope.
we'll go on to question 3 then, and we're going to start with Dylan. And again, I'm going to give this one to both of you since it's a shorter question. How to pick which design rubric to follow? The one for this course, Quality Matters, Blackboard Exemplary courses. They're all similar, but they're different. So any recommendations, Dylan?
Well, I can speak to what I have the most experience with, which is the one that we use at UW-Milwaukee, and I'm happy to share that out. It is an adaptation of the UC Chico rubric, and one thing that I like about it is that it does include elements of not just design, but also more on the implementation side. Now, of course, when you're using a design rubric matters, so having something like Quality Matters, which to my mind is just about design, before a course starts, I think is really important. But having a rubric that also includes things about how well an instructor interacts in the online environment, that sort of thing, even if it's used as in a design capacity, I think it can really help instructors get a sense of what is important, kind of reinforce those effective practices for when the course is ongoing. So that's sort of my my take on that.
Great, thank you. Jessica?
I'd like to echo Dylan, and University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee has some fantastic resources like checklists and things like that, just like University of Central Florida. I use those resources all the time. But when you think about which design rubric to follow, you know, some institutions will tell you this is the one to follow. Others will give you a little more freedom. Here at MSU, you know, we are a Quality Matters institution, but it's not required for anyone to use it. So in my work with faculty, I've had good success finding out what makes them more comfortable. Some people want a checklist. They want that step-by-step, what can I check? Maybe they're newer to blended learning or online learning, and they really prefer to go through and feel like they're following a set of instructions, whereas others are very experienced and are looking for just, you know, best practices and things that they can use to improve their course. So I do think that a lot of it comes down to the comfort with the faculty member. And quality is not, you know, quality assurance is not a one-step process. It's iterative. So they may decide to change rubrics throughout. I think it's important to realize that you're not tied to any particular one unless your institution tells you you are.
Right, good. And I just want to touch base too on the one that we deliver for them in BlendKit is one similar to what we use here at the University of Central Florida. And like Jessica kind of talked about, when it's specifically designed for your university, it is something that as an instructional designer or an online department that you need to be making sure that it's aligned with campus initiatives. Or, you know, I remember when we first started it, it didn't have a whole lot of accessibility items to check off, and now that's definitely grown over the years. So I think when it's your own, that you just need to make sure that if there's anything university specific, that, like you said, it's in that constant state of change.
And Sue, can I add two things real quick?
Absolutely, Dylan, go ahead.
Well, one is that I think having as both of you are talking about, having a more of a common rubric can help give instructors on campus a sort of a common terminology or a set of ways of discussing course design that can help facilitate a campus-wide conversation. So I think that it can be helpful for that. I also wanted to say that something that we've had a little bit of not trouble with, but we've really had to work with in terms of our certificate program is that our certificate program is kind of like it's a way to recognize effective online and blended teaching. So they're combined there. But we've had some trouble with the face-to-face components of a blended course and really being able to identify where is the effective teaching happening there. And we get that information through instructor reflection, and we can, of course, do classroom evaluations and visits and things like that. But it's something that I think is a little bit more unique to in terms of a certification process to the blended environment, where not everything's all online, and you're looking in these different kinds of spaces. So.
Right. I've even had faculty that, even though they've created blended courses, do have some complete face-to-face courses, and have said they've even used that checklist to go back to their face-to-face course and make sure all those elements are there. So there's definitely crossover in that. Okay, we're going to go on to question number 4. I'm going to start with Jessica and then move over to Dylan. Do most people do face-to-face before online, or do they use the flip approach and do online before face-to-face? Do either of you have recommendations? Is there a formula for the amount of time between those? So we'll go ahead and we'll go to Jessica first.
It's kind of a two-step question. So there is literature showing that people tend to start face-to-face before moving online, but I do think that's changing. A large component of my dissertation work was on faculty learning and how faculty understand the technological components of their course. And what seems to be out there right now is that they contextualize, those who have started with face-to-face contextualize technology in the face-to-face realm. So they first start thinking about how to take their classroom and put it online, or how to take their classroom and blend it. And when I have faculty come work with me here at MSU, one of the first things is, well, how do I know what to put online, and what's the percentage there? Right. So it doesn't necessarily, there is no one formula, and that's tricky. Different institutions define things differently. So the Online Learning Consortium says that blended is 30% to 70% online, whereas MSU says that a blended course is 50% online, at least 50% online. So that there's a little difference from institution to institution there too. And when we talk about approach, I really do, again, I have them write down their teaching philosophy and then focus on what they're looking to accomplish and what their course goals are. So work with them individually on what to put online. I think Dylan will probably have some things to say about that as well.
Okay, Dylan.
Well, I was hoping that Jessica would be able to give a definitive formula for this division, because I don't have it myself. I can sort of speak to the same sort of issues. I think that part of the first question about do most people go face-to-face before online, I think that both of these are the cases in terms of blended, is that we have so many more instructors on our campus who are going to a blended format after having taught face-to-face and online on some level. And I think part of that is because from an institutional perspective, it's maybe a little bit easier to see what the benefits are of a fully online course, and then you have your traditional face-to-face. But it does sort of, a lot of our instructors here do have that experience in both realms, so trying to really decide then how to blend those together is really important. In terms of the amount of time between these portions of the course, like Jessica said, I think a lot depends upon the teaching philosophy, what the course objectives are, what instructors are looking to do. I think that it does sometimes help to have a little bit of a pattern, especially for students who are new to the blended format. And the one piece of advice that I tend to follow is that I do try to meet face-to-face a little bit more during periods of anxiety for students. So that tends to be early in the semester when students don't know what to expect from a course, and then at the end when projects are due, is giving them a little more opportunities to meet face-to-face so that we can mitigate that a little bit more. And then in the middle of the course then, where maybe we're already engaged in ongoing conversations, they feel comfortable with what's going on, but they don't have these big projects due, I think that can be very helpful also.
Right, and I think both of you said the correct answer 100%, that it varies, between institutions, colleges, universities, out in corporate training, K through 12. I mean, some of them define it when they first start going to the online delivery. Some of them define it as they have experiences and want to set up, kind of what their institution initiative is going to be. And then, like you said, you kind of go down to the specific faculty member in the course and what's being developed. And we talked a little bit about that on week 01 and week 02 about how an instructor themselves, when looking at creating a blended course, can do that.
Can I just say something really quick?
Absolutely. Sure, Jessica.
Dylan and I both kind of touched on this but didn't vocalize it. So when it comes to quality assurance, when you're figuring out that percentage and you're figuring out what your students will do, I love that Dylan said he tries to meet face-to-face more in terms of social anxiety or difficult topics, but also it's so important to have that online component be well-defined and students know how to interact with each other and with the content in there. So it's almost like creating an online course that you use in the classroom. It's students get really, really nervous when they don't know what to do with that online component and they feel disconnected. So I just wanted to say that kind of.
Absolutely. No, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Because of time, we are going to go ahead and we're going to skip question number 5, and so we'll follow up with that in an email afterwards. I'm going to turn it over to Rohan.
Thank you very much. Hello, sorry about that. We seem to have lost audio for a little while. And just directing the question to Dylan, and Jessica can follow. I'll just take one question. What are the key differences between effective online and blended rubrics? Jessica, and then you over to Dylan.
Oh, I apologize. I have many buttons happening. I hope you guys can hear me now. I was hoping you could clarify the question a little bit. Do you mean online, the difference between online and blended instruction, or the difference between online and blended rubrics?
Online and blended rubrics.
In my experience, online rubrics are used frequently as almost interchangeable. I love the resources that UCF provided. Those are very specific to trying to manage both the face-to-face and the online components of a blended course. So I think what you see in those blended rubrics a little bit more is the intersection of those two spaces, as opposed to some of the other online rubrics which focus exclusively on what you can do online. I find blended rubrics a little more flexible, but that might just be my opinion. So.
All right. Thank you. Dylan, you want to touch on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, sure. I guess I would kind of reiterate what Jessica said there, in the sense that it tends to be online rubrics tend to dominate there, and if there is something about blended, it often ends up to be sort of added on almost as an afterthought, something about what goes online face-to-face and what goes face-to-face, and the integration of the two formats. So I think I think that, you know, at least having something there that addresses that as those integrative aspects, I think it does sort of, and if we're talking about course design again, it omits what it is that's going on in the face-to-face class, but that's part of the fact that it's a little less transparent than what happens in an online environment either way. But it feels like that would also be another component, and that would be a very big rubric.
All right, thank you very much. That closes our session in relation to the panel today. If you have any other questions, Sue and I will compile and forward those to Dylan and Jessica, and we'll post your responses in Canvas discussion area, that is, and we'll also put it in the YouTube video section. Don't stop. Believe it or not, this is our last webinar session. And what a learning journey it has been, right, Sue? Next week is your time and our time to catch up. We have until Monday, April 6th, to submit any assignments to earn badges. At 11:59 p.m. EDT, the assignment section will close. Sue and I are working to catch up the all DIY grading. We are working on the last DIY assignments first, and we'll circle back to DIY 1 and 2 assignments. I realize in the discussion area or the Q&A section, many individuals have been asking questions regarding the EduCourse credential. To receive a badge certificate, you will need to earn the BlendKit completion badge and also submit and pass the portfolio during the review process, and of course pay a small fee. Information is also located on our site. And I would advise you, as I've always said, go to the module section. We have a section marked or titled EduCourse Credential. Once you go there, you locate the information and it will give you the detailed rubric that you need to follow for your submission. I want to point out a few things regarding the portfolio schedule. Here is our plan for reviewing portfolios. Submit your initial portfolio by April 13th, 2015. Sue and I and the team will review your portfolio. We will review your material and return them to you by April the 20th, that is 2015. You'll have an opportunity to make changes and resubmit your portfolio no longer than May the 5th, 2015. Let me go back because a question was asked earlier regarding the final time that you can apply for the credential, and that date is going to be April the 6th. All right, so make sure you have those in mind. Sue and I will later submit your names and the portfolio completed to EduCourse by May the 11th, 2015, that is. BlendKit materials. Of course, we have received a few questions about how long BlendKit materials will be available. The Canvas course will be closed early May. Until then, you can click around and look at the materials. Remember, assignments are due on that time as indicated earlier. BlendKit materials are or do have a Creative Commons license and are available. If you want to adapt for your organization, please feel free to do so, and we will be happy to discuss those events with you. In fact, we would encourage you to join or start a group with your colleagues who are teaching blended courses so that you can encourage one another and share successful practices. At this point in time, I'll pass over to Sue, who will give an overview of the feedback for week 5. Sue?
Great. Thank you so much, Rohan. Sorry about those audio mishaps, but hopefully we're back on. All right, we're going to go ahead to week 5. You see there the URL for the feedback form and the QR code that you are also able to use to access that. If we go ahead and take a second to review what's already been submitted, we see that here is the week 5 feedback we received. And again, if you haven't completed the form, you'll be able to find that at the end of the week 05 in the modules area. All right, we can see here that a lot of us are engaged in the readings, the DIY, the blogs, some other areas of the course too, but again, we're active, and I think that's just wonderful when you get to week 5 and you still have so much interaction and contribution happening. I am going to promote that you fill that out for week 5 if you haven't, and at this time I'm also going to solicit to please complete the course feedback. We will be sending out an overall BlendKit course evaluation that is housed outside of Canvas, so if you only have a few minutes to spare, we'd much rather you complete the overall BlendKit evaluation, but hopefully you can complete both. We will send that out next week, so please look out for that. And even if you just checked into the course a few times, you're still on week 1 or 2, please go ahead and make sure that you complete the final evaluation. And for whatever part you were able to attend, we get to hear how that went for you. I'm going to pause here for a moment in case there's any other logistical questions that we have. Okay, seeing none, I want to thank again today's guest speakers. Thank you very much, Dr. Dylan Barth and Dr. Jessica Knott. We truly appreciate your time and your contributions to today's BlendKit session. We also thank John Pizzo for his patience today with our technical hiccups and all that was happening. We'd also like to give special thanks to all of the guest speakers that have taken time out of their busy work lives and really contributed a lot of their experience and best practices and resources to us. Again, thank you to all of our special guests who were able to help us at this time. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Rohan. He's got a little bit, if you'd like to see him live, he will be attending a conference, so he's going to tell you a bit about that.
Yes, Sue, thank you very much. What a way. I would love to see everyone live, and live it's going to be in Denver, and that's the Blended Learning Conference in July. It's a great opportunity to push forward with your work in blended learning. It's important to get involved. Online and face-to-face participation options are still available, and we, the BlendKit team, or part of the team I would say, is going to be there to meet up, tweet up at some point, reunion at the event, and I want to encourage you to remember, you can do this by typing in http://bit// and blend15, that is. So therefore, at this point, I want to say I've enjoyed the journey, and I'm sure working along with Sue and John was a wonderful experience. And I'm going to pass it over to Sue. Just say your last goodbye, Sue.
Thank you, Rohan. How bittersweet is this? I also wanted to just say, too, although you have lovely, tiny thumbnail pictures, I'm not sure if I'd be able to pick many of you out of a crowd. So if you do see either Rohan or myself at any conferences or out grocery shopping, we do promote that you do come up to us and say hello and introduce yourself and let us know personally how your experience went with the MOOC. And we are also going to be soliciting feedback for any suggestions you would have for improvement or other resources you think would be attributes to add to the course. So again, look for that feedback email that will go out next week. And we wish all of you the best as you pursue the development and teaching of your high quality blended learning course. And please make sure you do keep in touch with us. You do have our BlendKit URL and several other ways to reach out to us in Canvas at least until April 6th. And then again through the email at blendkit@ucf.edu. So signing off is both Rohan and I.
Goodbye from the BlendKit studio in
Orlando, Florida.